Having watched Lord of the Rings maybe like 20 times in my life, I never really understood what the heck the Palantir was. Never understood what it did, or really what its power was. I knew it was kind of like a glorified Zoom call, but I never really understood the lore behind it. But now I am reading Lord of the Rings for the first time in my life, and I just got to the chapter titled The Palantir. And I have to say, while it's a bit strange and mystical to me, this chapter does an amazing job of explaining, at the very least, the origin of it, and in part, its abilities. It doesn't go into all of the abilities that it has in this chapter. I'm sure there's more, and I'm sure that I'm going to learn more later. But I have to admit as well that this thing is significantly darker than I imagined. But at the same time, originally when it was made, it doesn't seem like it was that dark in any way. It's a really confusing kind of thing, but I want to just try to clear it up by reading some of the passages in the book and trying to talk about what really the Palantir is and what it does according to this chapter in The Two Towers. But make sure you subscribe to the channel. I am reading Lord of the Rings for the first time in my life, and I'm publishing video essays on my read. I'm also going through the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson, and I'm going to do some Harry Potter and Narnia as the new TV series are set to come out in the next year or two. So it's going to be a bunch of video essays and like analyses of those texts. So like the video, subscribe, become a member if you want as well. And let's just keep talking about the Palantir. Because unlike the movies, this does not fall out of the dead corpse of Saruman's cloak. Well, you only know that if you've seen the extended edition. In the theatrical cut, Pippin just kind of finds it in the water. But in the extended, Saruman falls to his death, gets impaled on a spike, falls under the water, and the Palantir pops out. The book, however, is totally different. No surprise there. Saruman never dies in this moment. He actually uses his magic to attempt to convince the group that he is a victim in this instance. Gaslighting at its finest. And when he realizes he's lost, he tries to leave, but Gandalf uses magic to call him back, and he breaks his staff in his hand. So Saruman leaves dejected, and as he's leaving, there is a big object thrown from the window. That object is a Palantir, and it's thrown by none other than Grima Wormtongue. And there's this huge debate in the book as to whether Grima was aiming at Gandalf or Saruman. And it's kind of a joke that his indecision led him to not being able to hit either of them. But after Pippin gives the Palantir to Gandalf, the movies do a good job of portraying the desire that Pippin has to see it. And I'll talk about this at the end, but I almost think this was guided by fate. Pippin's overwhelming desire to look again into the Palantir actually helped the entire fellowship. Because Gandalf and Aragorn, they didn't look into it, because if they did, it would have been significantly more dangerous. And he kind of goes and takes a look at it on the way back to Edoras, not in Edoras itself, like the movies have. But the book describes this occurrence like this. Pippin sat with his knees drawn up and the ball between them. He bent low over it, looking like a greedy child stooping over a bowl of food, in a corner away from the others. He drew his cloak aside and gazed at it. The air seemed still and tense about him. At first, the globe was dark, black as jet, with the moonlight gleaming on its surface. Then there came a faint glow and stir in the heart of it, and it held his eye so that he could not look away. Soon all the inside seemed on fire. The ball was spinning, or the lights were revolving. Suddenly the lights went out. He gave a gasp and struggled, but he remained bent, clasping the ball with both hands. Closer and closer he bent, and then became rigid. His lips moved soundlessly for a while. Then, with a strangled cry, he fell back and lay still. The cry was piercing. The guards leapt down from the banks. All the camp was soon astir. So in this little vision that Pippin has, it just seems like a bit of a FaceTime call between him and Sauron. Because Sauron has one of the Palantir in his possession. Gandalf talks about this later, then I will read this a little bit later as well, because there's you have to know about these different stones and how Sauron got the Palantir. But this vision seems darker than the movies actually portray it, to be honest. Even though they are dark in the movie, and even though Pippin looks like he's in a good amount of pain, I think the book does a better job of showing the ambiguity and the darkness that this object has at the moment. And it actually, in a weird way, gives more personality to Sauron than I was expecting. This is the part of the end of the conversation that he has with Pippin. "So you have come back. Why have you neglected to report for so long?" I did not answer. He said, "Who are you?" I still did not answer, but it hurt me horribly, and he pressed me, so I said, "A hobbit." Then suddenly he seemed to see me, and he laughed at me. It was cruel. It was like being stabbed with knives. I struggled, but he said, "Wait a moment. We shall meet again soon. Tell Saruman that this dainty is not for him. I will send for it at once. Do you understand? Say just that." Then he gloated over me. I felt I was falling to pieces. No, I can't say anymore. I don't remember anything else. Now this is the moment that Sauron kind of feels scarier to me. He has a voice in this instance. He can talk to Pippin rather than in the movies where they kind of just don't have him speaking at all, or speaking in like this like gobbledygook kind of language. But the group gets in a big conversation here, and Gandalf actually does something interesting. He gives Aragorn the Palantir to watch and maintain, bowing as he gives it. It's a really, really cool part in the book. It honestly feels like Gandalf is now coronating the king in some way. It just felt really important to me. But he also tells Aragorn not to use it yet, and that they were actually lucky that Pippin touched it because Gandalf himself was thinking about using it, but was glad that he didn't because he's not ready to be revealed to Sauron yet, and he's not ready for that kind of trial. But the Palantir seems to have kicked Sauron into high gear, because directly after this, something pretty terrifying happens. Before this point, all the fell beasts did not cross over the river near Mordor with the Nazgul. Sauron was kind of keeping them safe, making sure his plans didn't get noticed. But after a short discussion of the book that we get, we have a chilling scene. The book says this: "At that moment, a shadow fell over them. The bright moonlight seemed to be suddenly cut off. Several of the riders cried out and crouched, holding their arms above their heads as if to ward off a blow from above. A blind fear and a deadly cold fell on them. Cowering, they looked up. A vast winged shape passed over the moonlike black cloud. It wheeled and went north, flying at a speed greater than any wind of Middle-earth. The stars fainted before it. It was gone. They stood up, rigid as stones. Gandalf was gazing up, his arms out and downward, stiff, his hands clenched. 'Nazgul!' he cried. 'The messengers of Mordor! The storm is coming! The Nazgul have crossed the river! Ride, ride! Wait not for the dawn! Let not the swift wait for the slow! Ride!' Now, this moment doesn't completely end Book 3. It would be insane if the Book 3 ended on this little word right here. That'd be terrifying. But I also think it's terrifying to think that Sauron is unleashing his power in Middle-earth now. It's almost a full declaration of war. It just feels so ominous and terrifying. And as Gandalf musters Pippin and they flee to Minas Tirith, Pippin becomes us as readers for a few minutes. And he peppers Gandalf with questions about everything that we too want to know. And I just want to read a page or two of the book here because it's just better than me sitting down and explaining it. Because Tolkien is obviously better with his words than I am. But this is what the book says. Pippin was silent again for a while. He heard Gandalf singing softly to himself, murmuring brief snatches of rhyme in many tongues, as the miles ran under them. At last the wizard passed into a song of which the hobbit caught the words. A few lines came clear to his ears through the rushing of the wind. Tall ships and tall kings, 3 times 3. What brought they from the foundering land, over the flowing sea? 7 stars and 7 stones, and 1 white tree. What are you saying, Gandalf? Asked Pippin. I was just running over some of the rhymes of lore in my mind, answered the wizard. Hobbits, I suppose, have forgotten them. Even those that they ever knew. No, not all, said Pippin. And we have many of our own, which wouldn't interest you, perhaps. But I have never heard this one. What is it about? The 7 stars and 7 stones? About the Palantir of the kings of old, said Gandalf, and what they are. The name meant that which looks far away. The Orthanc stone was one. Then it was not made? Not made, Pippin hesitated, by the enemy? No, said Gandalf, nor by Saruman. It is beyond his art, and beyond Sauron's too. The Palantir came from beyond Westerness, from Eldamar. The Noldor made them. Fëanor himself maybe wrought them in days so long ago that time cannot be measured in years. But there is nothing that Sauron cannot turn to evil uses. Alas for Saruman. It was his downfall, as I now perceive. Perilous to us all are the devices of an art deeper than we possess ourselves. Yet he must bear the blame, fool, to keep it secret for his own profit. No word did he ever speak of it to any of the council. Yet we had not given thought to the fate of the Palantir of Gondor in its ruinous wars. By men they were almost forgotten. Even in Gondor they were a secret only known to a few. In Arnor they were remembered only in a rhyme of lore among the Dunedain. What did the men of old use them for? Asked Pippin, delighted and astonished at getting answers to so many questions, and wondering how long it would last. To see far off, and to converse in thought with one another, said Gandalf. In that way they long guarded and united the realm of Gondor. They set up stones at Minas Anor, and at Minas Ithil, and at Orthanc in the ring of Isengard. The chief and master of these was under the dome of stars at Osgiliath before its ruin. The three others were far away in the north. In the house of Elrond it is told that they were at Anu, Minis, and Amon Sul. And Elendil stone was on the tower hills that looked toward Mithlond in the Gulf of Lune, where the grey ships lie. Each Palantir replied to each. But all those in Gondor were ever open to the view of Osgiliath. Now it appears that, as the rock of Orthanc has withstood the storms of time, so there the Palantir of that tower has remained. But alone it could do nothing to see small images of things far off and days remote. Very useful, no doubt, that was to Saruman. Yet it seemed that he was not content. Further and further abroad he gazed until he cast his gaze upon Barad-dûr. Then he was caught. Who knows where the lost stones of Arnor and Gondor now lie? Buried or drowned deep. But one at least Sauron must have obtained and mastered to his purposes. I guess that it was the Ithil stone, for he took Minas Ithil long ago and turned it into an evil place. Minas Morgul it has become. Easy it is now to guess how quickly the roving eye of Saruman was trapped and held, and how ever since he has been persuaded from afar and daunted when persuasion would not serve, the bitterbit, the hawk under the eagle's foot, the spider in a steel web. How long, I wonder, has he been constrained to come often to his glass for inspection and instruction? And the Orthanc stone so bent toward Barad-dûr that, if any save a will of adamant now looks into it, it will bear his mind and sight swiftly thither. And how it draws one to itself, have I not felt it? Even now my heart desires to test my will upon it, to see if I could not wrench it from him, and turn it where I would, to look across the wide sea of water, and of a time to Tirion the fair, and perceive the unimaginable hand and mind of Fëanor at their work, while both the white tree and the golden were in flower. He sighed and fell silent. So that bit of lore is the kind of deep dive into the Palantir, but I kind of have to admit this thing still seems like it's untapped and dangerous. Maybe it really just feels like that because it's in the hands of the enemy and Sauron is a dangerous person, but the whole thing just seems terrifying to me. I actually kind of think this is a commentary for Tolkien on the danger of technology. Now, this is going to kind of be debatable, and I'll talk about this in a bit too, but maybe the danger of technology and how it being in the wrong hands can lead to disastrous things. Now, this Palantir, or the Palantiri, or however you say that in the plural, of Palantri, seemed like they were for noble and good uses originally, and that they really united the kingdom of Numenor and Gondor. But as they fell into the hands of the enemy, they found despicable and disgusting ways to use these things, and it just perverted these things in a pretty gross way. Now, I love that they are kind of a deeper magic than Saruman or Sauron can even craft, but they are also things that seem to have a good deal of superstition attached to them. The idea that some are thrown into the bottom of the sea makes me think that. And that there were kind of 7 all across the lands of men at one point, it really does make this seem like it's a bit of a communication system and perhaps is even a warning about the potential of communication like this. I don't know, it's a strange thing. It's like a side thought, but it almost feels like communication in this way is simultaneously the most incredible thing that there is, but also the most dangerous and fearful. I don't know quite how to explain why, because I think this book is kind of leaving it pretty ambiguous for us readers so that we don't really know what's going on here either. But I don't know, I just have really weird vibes about this thing right now. Again, it just seems like something that I've kind of been thinking about lately, even with our modern technology and the ability to know everything that's happening in the world at any given point. Now, this is all just kind of personal theory, so none of this is really real, and I'm very curious what your thoughts are in this. But sometimes I don't know if the human mind was made to be able to process all the things in the world that are happening simultaneously with the news cycle. I mean, you open up social media or an app and you see all the terrible things happening in just like a few short seconds. Just this week, there are protesters in LA and New York. There was a plane crash where everyone but one person died. There were crackdowns on immigration, more strife in the Middle East. And in my town 2 days ago, a cement truck lost control going down a hill and hit another car, killing the person inside. It's tragic. All too tragic, and it's all too much. It's like this overstimulation of communication sometimes I think can do more harm than good. Because at some point, a lot of people in this world end up stressing all about the things going on rather than really living their life. It's almost like the line that Gandalf said in the beginning. I'm kind of just thinking this off the cuff. It's a dangerous thing going out your front door, Frodo, or what does he say, Bilbo Baggins or Frodo Baggins? There's no knowing where you might be swept off to. And sometimes we worry about those things and are terrified, and they kind of cause us to go into inaction. Rather than in this story, even though there's danger outside your door, you still face it head on. Like the line that Gandalf says at the end of this chapter is one of my favorites, where they're not going from danger, but they're going into danger. Because this is kind of really what the true calling of, I think of human beings are, of every race in Middle Earth too. That they're not necessarily supposed to run from danger, but that they're supposed to hit it face on and really crack down on this, because then people can actually live their life. I don't know, it's just like all off the cuff thoughts right now. I don't really know. I am very curious your thoughts on this idea and really what the Palantir is or does. Don't give me any like huge spoilers if there's like something significant in the book that comes later, but please let me know what you kind of think this is. And if this is maybe some kind of possibility for discussion for Tolkien lamenting the use of technology. All my thoughts on this are kind of just far too raw and unsure. And again, this essay is really unorganized. So this is one of those essays where I'm just like, hey, give me your thoughts and opinions on it in the comments below. But I think this thing is really ominous and it seems dangerous in the wrong hands, because I find it interesting the pull of this object. Saruman almost couldn't help looking further and further and pushing things to a degree that ended up being his downfall, looking into Barad-dûr. Perhaps this is why he made an army and attempted to compete with Sauron. Yes, in the books he's not joining forces, but he's actually attempting to gain the ring in order that he might be the highest power in Middle-earth. But it's pushing him too far in this. And this was his downfall. But again, I've talked about this before, but this chapter also made me think of the roles of fate. Because Gandalf being revealed early could have been devastating for the group. So perhaps the fate of Pippin to be overcome with the desire to look into this Palantir again, and thus sparing Gandalf from having to look and therefore reveal their greatest weapon in Gandalf himself. Because at that moment, Gandalf seems like the second strongest being in Middle-earth now behind Sauron. Seems like it's fate guiding the Fellowship even more. Again, I feel like this is a huge theme of this story. But that is the whole thing with the Palantir. It's both weird and more ambiguous than the movies have it out to be, but also a bit clearer in the lore and where it came from. So I hope you enjoyed this unorganized essay of my first time thoughts on my read through of this book. Make sure you subscribe if you want more of this, like the video, become a member for more content, and I'll see you in the next one.